You're listening to Fintechs, a podcast that explores the innovations and challenges in Canada's fintech landscape. My name is Sue Britton. I'm the CEO of Firefly Growth and an entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience in the financial industry. I also serve on the FinPay committee, and I'm an advisor for Holt Exchange. Join us as we sit down with industry leaders, trailblazers, and pioneers to discuss their journey, the evolution of fintech, and what's next for Canada's ever-dynamic fintech ecosystem. All right, we are live, and welcome, Hamed. I'm here today with Hamed Abbasi from Plooto, and someone who I met actually at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, and I'm thankful to know. And anyway, irrelevant what my experience, other than the fact that I've launched 3 companies, and all 3 of them have been clients at Plooto. So I'm a huge fan. But anyway, welcome, Hamed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. And I'm entrepreneurial journey is very, very hard, right? I think it was Steve Jobs that says, like, you have to be a little bit crazy to want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I became an entrepreneur because I don't think a lot of people wanted to hire me, or work with me. So I was like, I'm just going to start my own thing. But I think what gives you the energy throughout this journey to keep going is hearing stories like yours. That says, I started 3 companies, and all 3 companies, one thing I didn't have to worry about was like payments and payment operations, because I was using Plooto, and that gives me the energy to keep pushing, and that means a lot. When somebody uses what you've built, plus the help of hundreds of people, by the way, not just me. But that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. So thank you for the support.
Oh, great. Well, that's terrific. What a great way to open this conversation. So let's assume all people don't know who you are. Maybe let's start with that. Introduce yourself and your company and what you're about.
I would say that, my entrepreneurial journey, I didn't know what being an entrepreneur meant. I didn't think that it was possible for you to start your own company, right? When I was a kid, but I had a few, I would say, influences that I saw and people that were that had built their own businesses, and that gave me the aspiration to one day start my own business. But it was such a far dream that I never thought I could do that. So I went the corporate path. I went and joined Bank of Montreal in personal and commercial banking, but I just hated my life at the bank. So I was like, you know what, I need to leave and do something else. And during that time, we had the side hustle. My co-founder and I, Sergey, we had the side hustle where we built games, because this is just around the time when Apple came out with the iPhone, and social media was really blowing up, and game distribution was completely changing. It was going completely digital from buying CDs or DVDs at Staples or some other company, and we made this game. It generated over $1 million in 3 months,
Wow.
And we were like, okay, we're gonna go and start this, and went and did that for 4 or 5 years, and then we were one of the fortunate ones to be acquired by a larger gaming publisher. And so it gave us the opportunity to go and solve another problem, because once you're an entrepreneur, you're always an entrepreneur. You can't really stop. Sure. And one of the biggest challenges I had was managing payments and payables and receivables, and going to the bank and sending wire transfers, which gave us at that time we had the opportunity to start something, and this seemed like a big problem at the time. And just like any other entrepreneur, you think you have found something that nobody else has tried, and you're a genius, and then you get into the game and you're like, oh, now I know why. But yeah.
Yeah. I think because I think I met you in 2016, and when I originally when you originally sort of explained what you do, I was like, how can you do that? because no one else is doing
you were
that.
at Davis and Henderson at that time, right? Like I remember
I
coming to
just
your
left.
office. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was explaining this to you, and you were a lot wiser than I was, and you're like, well, it's going to be a tough journey to want to do this, but that's being an entrepreneur. You kind of have to be like a little bit crazy, I guess. So I was like, no, I think we can solve this. So
that's amazing. I applaud you for like pursuing this and continuing the journey, because I imagine it was not a straight, kind of hockey stick for you, right?
No, it took us you met me in 2016. We didn't have product market fit till October of 2019. So it was a big grind for the first 3 years. But thankfully I don't give up that easily. So
that's great. Okay, so tell us then, what is Plooto's main, kind of value proposition?
Yeah. So the way that I like to explain, before I just tell you what Plooto does, I want to say why we wake up every day and we go to work.
Yeah.
And I told you my journey as an entrepreneur and having to I was one of the lucky ones that got acquired, but 82% actually most small businesses fail. If you were to look at the statistics, 70% of businesses disappear within less than 10 years. Actually the failure rate for SMB is around 50% in the first 3 years. So it's a huge failure rate. So what made me think about the problem is why is it that so many small businesses fail? And there's many reasons, it could be wrong team or wrong idea or execution. But the number one reason why SMBs fail is due to poor management of cash flow. So when you look into that to see what is cash flow for small businesses, because cash flow can get very complex, as your company scales and complexities of the businesses increase. But for a small business, let's say around less than 100 people, cash flow is typically mostly accounts payable and accounts receivable. So it's just the inflow and outflow of funds. But that process is a really broken process of how you manage it. So in order for you to produce your financials, you have to really dig deep into every single transaction, and you have to categorize it and you have to reconcile it. And that's a lot of work that entrepreneurs don't want to do, or they're just not good at it, or they just don't have the skill.
All of the above.
And I know that because you didn't start your 3 businesses to enter invoices and chase clients to pay you, but that is such a crucial component of running a successful business, is managing your cash, and a lot of people don't do it right. So our idea was that why don't we use technology, because it's just a process, right? Accounts payable and accounts receivable is a process. Why don't we use technology to automate the process, bring it to the cloud, because a lot of these tasks that you do to get to the final AP and AR outcome are things you got to do offline. Why don't we bring it, centralize it in one single place, and then allow you to connect your bank, connect your accounting software, connect your team, so you have one end-to-end solution for managing your accounts payable and accounts receivable, and that's basically what Plooto is. It's a single end-to-end solution that automates your accounts payable and accounts receivable.
And I know the answer to this, but it's better coming from you. How is it different from what I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's typically offered to you as part of what your bank does for you? For
sure. And I think when we started Plooto, that is actually the number one question I got from everybody was I in fact, I'm not going to name the bank. We pitched some very senior people at a Canadian bank. We pitched them for an hour, and all he kept asking is but we already have payments in the bank. Why do we need this? Well, I like to point to the statistics, right? Is like if that solution was working, people would be using it. If that solution was working, small businesses, the failure rate of small businesses due to cash management would not be as high as it is. So the solution that the banks offer is well, you have to think about how a bank buys solutions, right? Typically, a bank, being the behemoth that they buy solution for very specific use cases. So if I want, for example, treasury management, they have a solution for me. If I want a credit card for my employees to pay for expenses, they have a separate solution for me. So the number one issue is that none of these typically work together, right? Like you have a very fragmented experience across this monolith solution that is built using many standalone solutions glued together, or in a lot of cases just band-aided together. So the experience is terrible, basically. The experience that the banks offer you, because it's not end-to-end. Secondly, they are not helping you streamline a lot of the workflow. So what they're giving you is that they're giving you a part of the total end-to-end solution that you need. And I think this is another thing, when we pitched some of the Canadian banks about our solution, they were saying, like, can you just carve out this solution and sell us this part of Plooto? And to that is like, no, like this whole thing needs to work together in order for small businesses to see value out of it. And I can't just like carve this part out and sell it to you. So I think there's many solutions, but it's just the fact that it's not end to end. It's a separate solution. The experience really sucks. It doesn't work with the technologies that you have. It doesn't get updated. I mean, good luck calling small business banking and trying to ask them why your invoice doesn't sync automatically with your accounting software, and see how long it takes them to answer that question for you.
Man, I am so tempted to talk to you I could fill an hour with issues, not to mention, I mean, this last company that I started with, coincidentally with my move to BC, has been horrendous in trying to and I'm still not. I have two businesses, and one already had a bank account and a credit card and whatever, but I was transitioning to I'll just call it smarter solution. I have and that process started in July, and I have still yet to be able to log in.
Yeah, this is typically the experience that you get from most FIs, right? I think when we were talking about, I remember a bank executive asked me, like, how many weeks does it take to onboard a client? And I told him that it takes us 2 minutes to onboard a client. You just couldn't understand like what that even meant. So I think unfortunately that is the world we live in, because for so far banks have not really needed to evolve because of the stronghold that they've kept on this. But I think the times are changing, and there's a lot of good stuff that's happening.
Yeah, for sure. I was talking to a bank, one of the big bank executives, an executive from one of the big banks. There we go. Get it right, Sue. He was, saying, but, we have a solution for small businesses. We have a credit card product that does blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and that's maybe one of my other points that I'd love you to talk about, because it's, credit cards are clearly not the primary. I mean, I don't want to be paid by credit card, at least, for the types of businesses that I've started. It's like, it's not the most strategic solution for payments, for all variety of reasons, whether it's, both money in and money out. But what kinds of, I remember when I first used your platform, it was as simple as almost just an email, and, the amount I needed to either pay or get paid was incidental. Didn't matter. Could be yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that, because sometimes we actually, get points against us for being too simple, because they think, we, when I show this to some of like the traditional banking executives, they think, oh, like I can build this, and I'm sure you can, but it's not as easy. We spend a lot of time thinking about every single step of the process that you as an entrepreneur would go through in order to get paid or to pay someone, and that's a very complex problem, because if you really think about a transaction between two parties in a consumer banking, it's really easy, right? It's just like, let's say you and I go to a restaurant, we split a bill, I send you an Interac money or a Venmo. Like, I don't need a receipt, I don't need an invoice. It's just, the payment that needs to get processed. Whereas with a business transaction, you have two different entities. They have two different accounting software where the invoice or the bill is generated. They have two different bank accounts. There's different approvals that are required in between, and then there's also reconciliation, and not to mention risk in the settlement, because the amounts are larger. So you're 2xing the complexity, because it's two sides that you have to worry about. And because of that, we spend a lot of time thinking about that and how to simplify that. Which I'm glad that you enjoyed that experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, so maybe kind of moving on from your product, which again I could talk about forever because it's so amazing. Like let's talk about like the huge news that has happened in the last 48 hours.
Yes.
Because, I'm pretty sure that you are going to be one of the initial podcasts that we release with Fintechs Canada. And so everybody's going to, be pretty anxious to hear people talk about, this amazing news, which is, and you can take your pick on which one you want to talk about, but that, the fall economic statement that Minister Freeland presented included several pages and a commitment to, I'm going to say open banking, just because I will tell you my bias around, I don't think it matters what we call it, but I think she's referred to it as consumer-driven or consumer-focused banking or consumer-driven banking. So that's going to happen. It's going to be clearer in 2024 what that means, and then 2025 the regulation's going to come into effect. That also that Canadian Payments Act is going to finally be amended and changed to allow for greater membership or more members or access essentially to the payment systems, which is one of those legs of the three-legged stool that is needed to, allow payment service providers and others to not have to go through banks to access the payment systems. And then lastly, yesterday, the Retail Payments Activities Act published their regulations that, again, are also going to start coming into effect next year. So
yeah.
Like, it's so funny how, we've been, so many folks like yourselves and, of course, Fintechs Canada have been pushing and pushing for all of these things, and they all happen in 24 hours of each other. So,
you know what it is? Life, I think it was President Obama who said government is like playing football, right? Where you're fighting over a couple of inches for a long time, and then once in a while an opening happens and you throw that touchdown. And I think this is a great example of what we can achieve if we keep pressing on and we continue to put pressure. So we have legislature that is important to our industry and more importantly, important to small businesses. And I'll explain to you why this matters to many small businesses. So in fact, when we started Plooto in around 2016, people were talking about real-time payments and open banking back in 2016. And the answer was like, every year we're gonna make this happen, and now it's gonna be in 2024. So that just like shows you that from the time things start, it might take 8 to 10 years before they're a reality. But why this is really, really important is that you touched upon, as a small business, you using credit cards and how expensive it is for you to accept payments through credit cards. Because typically, depending on the card that the payer uses, you are being charged anywhere from at the lowest rate possible, 2.75, all the way to 3.5%. Of the total amount that you're getting paid for. And most small businesses operate on very, very low margins. So to say that now on top of that, we're going to deduct, 275 basis points all the way to 350 basis points off of that amount that you're getting, that's a lot of money that when you end at the end of the year that you could put towards hiring people, put towards maintenance. But what really is frustrating is that we already have a solution that businesses can use, but it's not available to anybody else but the banks. Right. And they make it very, very hard for fintechs such as Plooto to access that system because of many reasons. Fintechs are not secure. Fintechs, are gonna get hacked and use your information without your consent. And so we had to go through this entire process where we had to mitigate or eliminate each of these arguments that the traditional financial institutions were putting in front of us for why we cannot open the system up. And finally, with legislation around who's going to be responsible for customer data and how that's going to be shared and putting governance around that. So we have that with the Retail Payment Act, which is great. Now we have one set of standards to follow. And then the most important thing is around open banking, because when you come to Plooto and you want to connect your bank, we actually have to use a third party to log in on your behalf to scrape the information for us to identify who you are. And we don't need to do that because, you already have proven to the bank to who you are. And that's your information, right? Like if I go to Facebook and I post something, I can go to Facebook and download all of that information and tell them to delete that because it's my information. Well, the same thing can happen here with your identity and transaction. So the benefit of that is that you as a small business now can process, once we get this going, I mean, just made the promise. I mean, you know how government works. This could take another 2 or 3 years. But ultimately what we're going to have is that we're going to have a framework where you as a small business owner can come to Plooto, press a button, identify yourself in a couple of seconds. We don't need to screen scrape anything. We have your information. We can adjudicate you in a couple of seconds, give you an account that you can operate in Plooto. And then when it comes to your payments, you don't need to now wait anywhere from 3 to 10 business days, which is literally what payments take in Canada to get processed, to something where it's like Europe, where transactions get processed in 10 seconds between different financial institutions, between different countries. And that's where we're going to get to, because you as a small business owner now, as opposed to paying 350 basis points on your total invoice amount, you can send a payment that is near instant for a couple of cents. And now we can do that. And to me, this is one of the, I guess today is Christmas came early, right? For the fintechs.
And just to, we're going to have people that are listening that are going to be more informed than, the average, certainly than the average business. But what you're talking about specifically is, if you can get direct access to be able to exchange, clear and settle payments, whatever portion of that, without having to go through a bank, you can use the rail directly. And therefore, your business model isn't to charge, crazy fees, right? And so reduce the costs. You can, make payments happen probably of any size, right? You're not limited to the Interac, or bank imposed limits. And I don't think
There's
people. Yeah.
settlement guarantee, which is actually one of the biggest reasons why payments are slow in Canada on fintechs, is because banks don't tell us if funds are available or not. So you have to
Right.
wait, up to 48 hours to find that out. So for sure.
Yeah. And then I mean, open banking just makes it. I mean, my hope is that open banking really does drive competition, but I think that will take a while because, again, people don't necessarily know. Small businesses don't know that you exist. They certainly are getting to know it, but it's harder for them to find you because nobody makes that easy. But
Totally.
this is game changing for you. And
For sure.
and do you anticipate a lot of hurdles to be able to, like, for instance, to become, a registered or an RTR participant, if that, in fact, ultimately, if the Canadian Payments Act changes to allow you to become one, do you think it's going to be crazy hard to become? Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think they're going to make it very, very hard for us to become part of that select group. But I don't mind that. To be honest, I think regulation should exist. I think our financial system relies on trust. And I don't want to put my money in a company like FTX, where you wake up next day and you don't know, where your funds are. So it's important to have regulation, and it is the job of the government to ensure that they hold companies, including fintechs and banks, responsible. So they act responsibly. So I'm all for it. What we were not for is not having a clear path to what it is that we need to do to be part of that group.
Yeah.
For us, it was a complete black box where if you wanted to be part of this group that had direct settlement, well, you had to be a bank. And have a banking license. Well, why do we need to be a bank? We're not lending any money out, right? Like, we're not holding deposits. So what is the purpose? Well, we don't know. This is what we have written. So at least now we have a set of guidelines, or we will, that it is going to give us a clear path, a checklist, let's say, that if we pass those tests, which we are all for, then we're going to have a path. And I think that clarity means more than anything else for us, because there's a lot of things that are happening in the financial industry and in the payment industry, where we go and we ask, well, why is this happening? And the answer 99% of the time, it's because it's always been like this. And I think this really fundamentally changes that, and it brings competition. And Canadians need competition. SMBs need competition. There's no reason why, as an SMB or small business owner or an entrepreneur, you have to wait 3 to 10 business days to get paid. Like, you should be able to get paid so you can put that cash to good use.
Absolutely.
Especially in this environment, because once that cash leaves your bank, you're earning no interest on it for 3 to 10 days, and that shouldn't be the case. So that having that set of guidelines, I think, is really, really important. But I am all for making sure that we have a fair system, that we know the rules of the game, and then we can play by the rules. I think the issue is that when you don't know the rules, it becomes very frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. I spent 3 years on the Stakeholder Advisory Council at Payments Canada, and it's amazing that, I'm not disparaging them or that at all. It was delightful to be part of that, but we talked for 3 years about something that we could never get to the specifics of, right? And so it's like, that really resonates. And so maybe just that, the last point then, what are you hearing or hoping about, the real-time rail, which will be needed for you to actually, it's the one thing that hasn't been announced, right? That has, that I think is still a little bit murky as to what's really going on. Yeah.
I mean, the finance minister will probably tell us to, one step at a time. So I think it's all going to happen, right? Like, I think it was very important to make sure that we get open banking settled. Giving fintechs such as Plooto access to being part of having the ability to process transactions. I think those are very, very important. And I'm very close to the teams that are working on real-time rails and it's being built.
Cool.
Having said that, it's going to take anywhere from 2 to 10 years to be released, based on
Wow.
whatever something like is. But it was important to get the foundation correct, and then RTL can be built. But I'm very confident. We're not gonna. Now that we have this momentum, we're not gonna take our foot off the gas. So we're gonna continue to push, and that's the next big thing that we got to get done is real time rails.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go back to Plooto a bit, because I think it would be good to explain, where your focus is and where the future is for you. I mean, obviously you operate in Canada. What are you outside of Canada as well? And
we do have a large number of customers in the U.S. And also we process payments out to a number of countries where our customers pay their international suppliers.
Yeah, that's cool. And are you planning to, sort of, like, in terms of your sort of focus, is it consistent focus across all regions, or are you spending more time outside of Canada?
I believe Canada is a huge opportunity. Mm-hmm. Our major banks are considered some of the largest banks in the world, and also in North America. With the small population that we have, similar to California, we've been able to build some really amazing FIs that are operating at a North America level. So I think what that tells you is that there's a lot of margin in Canada that we find very interesting. And I also believe that there's not as much innovation that. So from a business perspective, I think there is a huge business opportunity here. And then from an innovation perspective, we believe that there's a lot of things that we could do that is going to bring value to Canadian business owners and entrepreneurs. So we want to invest in Canada, and we continue to invest in Canada. A majority of our customers are from Canada, and we love that because we are also based out of Toronto, and now we're hiring all over Canada. Most people think we're some like nameless billion-dollar business, out of the US. When we tell them that no, we're just a fintech in Toronto, they don't really believe me, but we're going to continue to invest in Canada because we think, this is where the innovation is needed. And then we continue to test it out in other markets. What I can tell you is that the problems that SMBs in Canada face are not unique to SMBs in Canada. I think it's a problem that SMBs in UK have it, in Australia have it, in many other countries have it. But I also, I'm a fan of history, and I know that when you scale too fast, especially in fintech, without really understanding the nuances of every country that you're opening up to, you're also setting yourself up for failure. So we're not in a rush to become an international where we operate in every country, but I can guarantee you that we're not trying to build I can guarantee you that we're trying to build a very impactful business. So once we get it right in Canada, then we're gonna really expand fast internationally. But it all starts in Canada, so we gotta prove it here because that's where it's most needed.
Well, and you're a great role model for success in growing a fintech in Canada, and so that's I think that's really important. And congrats on your Fast 50 Deloitte recognition. I think that's
Thank you.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, you're too humble. You're not just another fintech, But
thank you. No, I appreciate that. I mean, that the credit for that goes to the team. I just
I hear you.
I'm the face of it, but the actual work is done by Plutonians. So that credit goes to Plutonians.
I love that. Plutonians. So how about if I know a lot of credit unions, a lot of other financial institutions, frankly, a lot of companies are looking for solutions like what you offer. Are you interested in partnering? What are the conditions that would make that have an interest to you as a way to distribute your products to market?
It is a great question because when we started the company, I think the sentiment from a lot of FIs was that well, first of all, we don't invest in SMB technology, so no, thank you. We don't need it.
Yeah, can't make enough money off of those
exactly.
Small businesses. Yeah,
exactly. Like we don't make any money off of them. We're not building any technology.
Yeah.
And then the sentiment shifted to, oh, we already have a solution because we just built something and here's a check mark beside the SMB solution. However, I think the world is changing and there's a lot of forward-thinking FIs that are looking for ways to make their product offering more appealing. Also, with higher interest rates, the way banks make money is through deposits. So you need to think about how do I keep more deposits within my FI and not be a flight risk for a lot of those deposits. And one of the greatest ways to ensure that deposits don't leave your FI is to offer additional services where businesses can find value in. And number one issue is cash flow management. So I think that's where it becomes really interesting for some of the forward-thinking FIs. So we're always open to opportunity. We're always like having discussions. I think it just because you have one person who's forward thinking in that FI doesn't mean the good old boys in the boardroom are all for it as well. So we gotta it is a lot of education, but I think I see a lot of opportunity for some of these FIs to think outside of the box and embrace a solution like ours. I think the condition that has to be right for it is not only you got to have a buy-in, but you also have to think a little bit differently. As I mentioned, some banks ask us, oh, I just need this feature. Can you just pull out this feature? And I think you have to think about that end-to-end experience. So if the condition that has to be right for us is we got to make sure that there are some partners that want to see that end-to-end experience for their customers. And those are the ones that we're going to really focus on and we're going to prioritize. And those are the conversations that we're having and we find very interesting. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I can tell that you probably have a few scars from previous conversations where you've learned a lot about what it takes to partner. And, it frustrates me. In fact, I have been in my entrepreneurial journey, I have worked with clients who have not had enough respect for the I'll just say fintechs generally, but even just startups and the impacts they can have on them negatively if they aren't walking into the partnership with the right I say the right intention, but the what's good for both, right? But both organizations, and you can really hurt a great business by getting pulled into partnership conversations forever and ever, and maybe even distract your focus. I think we could both think of a few that have gone that way, but so that's good that you have that expertise.
No, I appreciate that. I think I think it's a famous quote by Gandhi that says, first they ignore you and then they laugh at you and then they fight you and then you win. I think we have passed the ignoring part and now might be somewhere between fighting and laughing. So I think the momentum is shifting. There are some very forward-thinking large FIs such as JP Morgan Chase that I think is doing some really, really cool, innovative work. So this is not to say that every FI in the world takes that position. I think there's some really cool stuff that are starting to happen in Canada as well with some of the FIs. But I think it just requires a shift and a perspective shift to think about how to work with fintechs and not try to fight them or not have this view that we can build everything and we can build the most amazing experience and take more of a forward-thinking approach that a company like a bank like JP Morgan Chase is taking, which is they're thinking about their bank as more of a platform where other fintechs can be a part of, and they can build on, and they can offer a better service and product than what they can offer. And then what they bring in is the scale, is the trust. It's that framework to ensure that their customers are safe, but at the same time, they're getting the best experience from some of the most innovative fintechs out there. And I think that is the right approach, and we need more FIs like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. I think you can see it certainly amongst the smaller growing, banks and credit unions. You can definitely see that, change of mindset and that willingness to think differently about, business models and customer relationships. And I was listening to the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank talk about their innovation journey. And one of the things he said is, if it was actually a piece of advice, and it's related to almost everything that you've said today, which is, if you're at a fork in the road, take it. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting because right now, you don't really know at the end of the day what your customers are going to do this year, next year, 5 years from now. Change is super important to not try and continue to, prevent, ignore, refute, right? So anyway, I think, it's been super great to chat with you. 8 years later, and as I said, I think before we got on camera, you look exactly the same age. So got good genes in your your
good lighting. Good lighting, I think helps as well.
Oh my God, you're
once
way
they turn off these lights, you don't want to see me.
Yeah, right. You're too humble. But I think we probably will wrap up. But what is there anything we haven't touched on, or anything you want to leave people with? I know you're a very, very, sort of important member of Fintechs Canada, that you've been a huge proponent of, kind of that collaborative approach to getting the industry to support, these great outcomes that we've had over the last couple of days with the changes that are needed. But anything else that you want to mention?
I think what's really important for us to, as a community in Canada, to embrace is that innovation is needed, and at the same time, my advice to a lot of if there are some of the executives at larger FIs are listening to this, is that you can't stand in front of innovation. It will happen. And that's just a market, and you can fight it or you can embrace it. And we all can be in a much better position if we embrace innovation, because ultimately it's good for the customer, and what's good for the customer is good for the business. And that's a view that we take. And my last word to my fellow fintech executives is that we got to keep pushing. I think 8 years been a long time for us to get some of this legislation in place, but it does work, and we need to continue pushing to make sure that every single consumer, every single business in Canada has access to innovative products that are priced at a level that they can afford.
Yeah, that make their lives easier, that, help them, keep more of their money in their own pocket. Absolutely. Completely.
Our dream is to, live in a world where, getting paid and sending payments is an afterthought for you as an entrepreneur. And right now it's not. It's a forefront of your probably processing power in terms of like what you need to think about on a daily basis. And we want it to be a complete afterthought for you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I think we should leave it there. That's a pretty good ending. Thank you very much. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thanks very much, Hamed. And where do people kind of connect with you if they want to reach out? What's the best way for them to do that?
I'm not on social media a lot, but I'm active on LinkedIn. So just find me
perfect
on LinkedIn, Hamed Abbasi on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Looking for more insights? Visit us at fintechscanada.ca or follow us on LinkedIn. We'll see you next time for more on Canada's latest fintech innovations.